Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into the inspiring life story of a remarkable figure who changed the course of history, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His journey is a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and unwavering belief in justice. Born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in a loving family that instilled in him the values of faith and equality. From a young age, he was deeply affected by the racial segregation and injustice that surrounded him. These early experiences shaped his vision for a world where everyone, regardless of their skin color, could live in harmony. King pursued his education with great determination, earning a degree in sociology from Morehouse College and later a doctorate in systematic theology from Boston University. It was during his time in Boston that he was introduced to the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, which would profoundly influence his approach to social change. King embraced nonviolent resistance as a powerful tool for achieving civil rights, believing that love and understanding could overcome hatred and oppression. In 1955, King's leadership came to the forefront during the Montgomery bus boycott, sparked by Rosa Parks' courageous refusal to give up her seat to a white passenger. This pivotal moment marked the beginning of a larger movement for civil rights in America. King's eloquent speeches and unwavering commitment to nonviolence inspired countless individuals to join the fight against racial injustice. As the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference (SCLC), King organized numerous peaceful protests and marches, advocating for desegregation, voting rights, and economic equality. His most famous moment came on August 28, 1963, during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where he delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. In front of a crowd of over 250,000 people, he shared his vision of a future where people would be judged by their character, not the color of their skin. This powerful message resonated deeply, igniting hope and determination across the nation. Despite facing immense challenges, including threats to his life and imprisonment, King remained steadfast in his mission. His dedication earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, recognizing his efforts to combat racial inequality through nonviolent means. Tragically, his life was cut short when he was assassinated on April 4, 1968, but his legacy endures. Today, we remember Martin Luther King Jr., not just for his remarkable achievements, but for his profound belief in the potential for change. His life reminds us that each of us has the power to make a difference, to stand up for what is right, and to advocate for a world filled with love and understanding. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you found this story inspiring, please consider following or subscribing for more uplifting content. Together, let's continue to honor his legacy by spreading kindness and striving for justice in our own lives.
I had a dream, but before that dream could take shape, I walked through prison cells. I heard threats in the night. I saw the blood of the innocent spilled on the streets. Yet still, I dreamed. Take your audience back in time. Imagine standing on the streets of Montgomery in the 1950s. A young preacher with nothing but courage in his voice dares to challenge the greatest injustice of his time. That preacher's name, Martin Luther King Jr. Show his life through to pictures. On one side, a boy born into poverty, facing the shadows of racism. On the other, a man standing before hundreds of thousands in Washington, declaring to the world, "I have a dream." That is the journey of Martin Luther King Jr. Give your speech a poetic rhythm. He dreamed not for himself, but for humanity. He marched not for fame, but for freedom. He spoke not with anger, but with hope. And by connecting his life to today, Dr. King gave his life so that freedom and equality might live. The question is not what he dreamed then, but whether we are keeping that dream alive today. This dream was born in the mind of a young boy in Atlanta, Georgia. As he grew, the dream grew with him. The dream saw him denied entry because of the color of his skin. The dream sat with him as he read books late into the night, hungry to understand justice. When Martin became a preacher, the dream stood beside him in the pulpit, urging him to speak not just to a church, but to a nation. And when buses in Montgomery refused to carry black passengers with dignity, the dream marched on foot. The dream walked into jail cells with him. The dream stood outside the White House doors. The dream climbed the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, where Martin lifted it high for the whole world to see. I have a dream. But dreams are dangerous to those who fear change. The dream was hunted. It was shot at. It was threatened. And on a balcony in Memphis, the man fell, yet the dream did not die. Because dreams, once spoken with truth and courage, cannot be killed. Today, that dream is still walking among us. The question is not whether Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. The question is, do we still carry it? Do we let it guide our steps? Do we let it live in our voices, in our actions, in our hearts? Because a dream that lives only in history is just a memory, but a dream that lives in us becomes a movement. He was not just a man of words, he was a man of action. His voice shook the walls of injustice, but his silence in prayer shook the heavens. He carried no weapons, only faith. He wore no armor, only courage. Yet he stood taller than armies. Martin Luther King Jr. was not fighting for one race. He was fighting for the soul of humanity. He did not shout with hatred. He spoke with hope. And that hope was louder than any bullet. They tried to chain his body, but they could not chain his vision. They tried to silence his mouth, but they could not silence his dream. His life was short, but his impact is eternal. If Martin were alive today, he would not ask us to admire his dream. He would ask us to live it. The question is not whether we remember his words. The question is whether we continue his work. History wrote his name, but the future depends on us to write his dream. Ladies and gentlemen, close your eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, but to imagine. Imagine a dream. Not an ordinary dream, but a dream walking among us. A dream that whispers, that cries, that demands to be heard. That dream lived in the heart of a man named Martin Luther King Jr. This dream was born in Atlanta, in the heart of a little boy who wondered why the world looked so unfair. It saw him turned away from playgrounds and restaurants because of the color of his skin. It sat beside him as he opened books late into the night, hungry for knowledge. It grew louder as he listened to the voice of justice in the scriptures. When Martin became a preacher, the dream stood in the pulpit with him, urging, "Don't just speak to the church, speak to the nation." When tired men and women refused to ride buses in Montgomery, the dream walked with them step by step, mile by mile. When Martin was locked behind bars, the dream pressed its hand against cold iron bars and whispered, "Do not give up." When he stood before presidents and lawmakers, the dream demanded, "Open the doors of equality." And one summer day in Washington, the dream climbed the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And on a balcony in Memphis, the man fell. Pause. Softer, but the dream did not die, because dreams spoken with truth and courage can never be killed. They tried to chain his body, but they could not chain his vision. They tried to silence his mouth, but they could not silence his message. They tried to bury him, but they could not bury his dream. Martin Luther King Jr. carried no weapons, only faith. He wore no armor, only courage. Yet he stood taller than armies. He was not just a leader of one people. He was a voice for all humanity. He dreamed of a world where justice would flow like a mighty river, where children of every race would hold hands without fear, where freedom would ring from every hill and every city. But today, that dream is not complete. It is waiting for us. The question is not, did Martin Luther King Jr. have a dream? The question is, do we still carry it? Do we speak with his courage? Do we march with his faith? Do we stand with his love? Because a dream that lives only in history is just a memory, but a dream that lives in us becomes a movement. And ladies and gentlemen, that movement is needed, now more than ever. But let us be honest, that dream is not yet complete. We still see divisions. We still hear the voices of hatred. We still witness injustice in our streets, in our schools, in our systems. The dream calls out to us. Will you carry me forward, or will you let me fade? But let us be honest. That dream is not yet complete. We still see divisions. We still hear the voices of hatred. We still witness injustice in our streets, in our schools, in our